Thanks all for joining us today on this webinar on careers post COVID-19. Over the next hour, we will look to get some clarity on what lies ahead in the world of work. How can our young graduates thrive and hopefully succeed in their organizations and careers? For those of you who are joining from outside, I'm Sriram. I'm working with the Office of Career Services at JGU. We have with us special speakers today. And besides that, we also have Meenal, who will be hosting this session. Both our guests have over 3 decades of experience, primarily in the human resources function. We were just discussing, both of them belong to organizations that are on everyone's lips these days. So one of them works with an organization worked with an organization that helps us build our immunity against viruses, and no prizes for guessing which product it is and which organization it is. The other organization delivers groceries, fresh fruits, and vegetables at the doorstep, and helps us avoid getting exposed to the virus. We are joined by Mr. V. Krishnan from Dabur and Mr. T.N. Hari from BigBasket. Krishnan worked with Dabur. It's a company with a legacy of 135 years in India. He was the executive director of HR at Dabur and was responsible for the India and the SAARC region, which has over 11,000 employees. He was also part of the executive committee at Dabur, and he sits on the reviewing committee of the Harvard Business Review. He's quite connected with students from across universities, and he's no stranger to JGU. Some of you would have come to our talk on the career transition Thursdays. Krishnan is entering his, shall I say, second career. He is now a business advisor and a mentor. He has been approached by a tech startup to mentor them, to be an advisor for them. He's an alumnus of FMS Delhi, and he's also been to the Kellogg School of Management. We are also joined by T.N. Hari. He is the CHRO of BigBasket and is a strategic advisor to Fundamentum. That's a capital fund, venture capital fund, started by Nandan Nilekani and Sanjeev Agarwal. He's written 3 books, which are on my to-read list. And he also writes very absorbing articles on LinkedIn. And I would strongly encourage our students and also our colleagues from the career services to go through them. He's been recognized as one of the top voices on LinkedIn. And Hari is an alumnus from IIT Madras and IIM Calcutta. Thanks so much, Hari and Krishnan, for joining us today. So we have broadly structured this conversation into 3 parts. We will start off with some context on the challenges facing businesses and the economy. In the second part, we will look at changes taking place in the world of work and what it will take for our graduates to succeed there. And in the third part, Meenal will take over in the last 15-20 minutes. She will open this session for questions where our attendees can start sharing their questions over chat. All right, so let's get started with a question I can share with Mr. Krishnan. Would you like to start off with sharing a little bit about how Dabur has been facing this challenge posed by COVID-19? What do you find emerging in the workplace at Dabur?
Well, thanks, Sriram. Thanks to the OP Jindal University and alumni and faculty. Thanks for the opportunity. I think the pandemic was kind of brewing up. We were kind of observing it from January onwards, and we're trying to make sense of what is going on. Though we're trying to kind of put some basic advisories and all in place, but I think the extent and the intent, extent to which it's going to hit us, I think all of us at least tend to probably underestimate it a bit. So initial, of course, was the whole thing we went into lockdown somewhere around 20th of March, and I think on that Sunday was the Janta curfew, and then the following Tuesday was the lockdown. So it took us some time to figure out, with understanding and figuring out how to respond to the whole thing. But I think without making any political statement, I must compliment the central government here. I think they were pretty quick off the block to at least give guidelines from the Ministry of Home Affairs and Ministry of Consumer Affairs in terms of at least getting essential services and essential products to get going. So since many of our products in the healthcare space were relevant, like for example, juices, honey, and hand sanitizer, liquid soaps, our iconic Chyawanprash, some Ayurvedic medicines. So we actually had to get quickly into more motion in terms of getting our factories open, at least for the products for which we had license, in almost a week to 10 days of the lockdown. So that way we were it was a positive kind of a pressure. Of course, we had issues in terms of getting raw material, packaging material into the manufacturing units, getting the finished goods into our warehouse, the warehouse to the distributor, because everywhere there were two problems. Manpower problem, because a lot of the labor had gone back to their hometowns, and transportation issues, because borders were sealed, trucks were not able to move. So, but we slowly kind of got over it. The other issue, of course, was that how do you manage the entire manufacturing supply chain and the last minute delivery to the retail outlet in a totally virtual, non-contact, non-physical world? So I think I suddenly realized that the hierarchical way, in a way, any organization works. You've got a CEO, you've got a CXO, you've got a fair amount of tires. So that approach is not going to work. So we quickly, while we got on to, say, MS Teams conference call meetings from almost 22nd onwards of March, the very first meeting was a Mancom, but we clearly decided that we need to get more on board. So to give a kind of a analogy, from a very vertical aerial view management hierarchically, we got into more of an amphitheater management. So we got more people on the calls. I mean, almost 70, 80 people, irrespective of whether they are no point calling it management committee. I mean, it was essentially like a working group. So right from a factory manager, production manager at a remote plant like Jammu, to maybe an area sales manager handling sales in Eastern UP, everybody was on the call. So it was a very democratized approach. Decision at the point of action, speed of execution, everybody being on the same page, high level of technological agility, because everybody had MS Teams, but nobody was using it. So people quickly learned the skill of projecting presentations on the go, sharing Excels. So I think the remote working culture kind of, the situation forced remote working and the norms around remote working. And before that also, when we were shutting down, while we were expecting a lot of people that work from home may happen, we realized that quite a few people don't have PCs and laptops at home. So we went on a war footing, buying almost about 100 PCs and laptops off the shelf, giving it to people. In some cases, we had to also flex our policies. We said, if you don't have a PC and I can't buy it from the market, we gave the office PCs to people with some level of checks and balances. It requested IT to put some level of firewalls, because they'll be using his personal Wi-Fi or dongle or whatever it is. So a lot of, I would say, quick and agile relook at the policies to make it relevant to the situation that we're handling. So I would say, look at the issue from a policy point of view, a people point of view, management point of view, and more importantly, we had a very clear task force in every region, every unit, to ensure that any case of COVID, whether with our employees, their neighbors, our extended organization, like vendors, etc., will be immediately reported and tracked so that everybody is safe. And the whole idea was that Dabur's vision or the statement is dedicated to the health and well-being of every household. So the simple message was figure out what does the consumer want, ensure how best can we reach it to the retail outlet or the warehouse of a modern trade outlet or that of an e-commerce company like Hari Big Basket, so that the consumer is not struggling to get what they are looking for. I think that was the principal philosophy on which the entire organization was working. It's a crisis. Supply chains have gone kaput. How best can we serve the consumer in this very, very difficult situation where there's a lot of difficulty at our own end, we'll handle it. But more importantly, let us ensure that products are able to reach to the consumer, at least what are essentially required and they're looking for. This is what I would say was the broad philosophy in which we are working.
Thanks, Mr. Krishnan. So I think a couple of points from what you're saying is that firstly, hierarchies, reduced hierarchies are better. I mean, it's almost like a form of holocracy in some ways, where every person is a contributor more than just their designation. And the second point you're mentioning is, being digitally savvy, knowing how to use Teams, knowing how to be on webinars, to communicate fluently online. So that's the second point you're mentioning. And the third point is making sure that the customer is not affected. And that's a good segue to my next question to Hari, because I read a news article that Big Basket was operating with only 20% of its workforce. How did you really manage to ensure that the customers were happy in the last 3-4 months?
So the biggest problem that I think most companies face is the shortage of manpower. So for us, the pandemic was provided the kind of tailwind that we've always been looking for, which is people who've never shopped online suddenly had no other choice but to shop online for grocery. But unfortunately, we did not have the capacity to deliver. So imagine the demand going up 5x and your capacity to deliver dropping to 20%. So you are in some trouble. So obviously customers were not happy, slots were always coming as booked. We could not service many customers, we had to turn them away. And what we did was we quickly reached out to several organizations that were hit by this crisis. So for example, the entire Retail Association of India, the Restaurants Association of India, Uber, Ola. There were several companies whose businesses had come to a standstill because of this crisis and manpower was available. So we tied up with many of them. Many of them did not fructify. Actually, there was a lot of enthusiasm. For example, RAI told us that there are 2,000 people available for use. You can deploy them. But when we actually began some conversation, we realized that most were not really interested. So I think many of these partnerships did not work out, but we worked feverishly to tie up with about 50, partners. And gradually, I think people also began realizing that, they need to make a living. And the fact that, we took care to sanitize the workplace, we took all the healthcare measures. Some people did return. But I think the most important thing was we made changes to processes that increased efficiency significantly, as a result of which we were able to do more with less. So for example, a picker in the warehouse would walk almost 10 kilometers every day to pick orders. But then what we did was that we said, let's reduce the assortment. Our assortment was about 25,000 and the government also stopped delivery of non-essentials. So the 25,000 SKU count came down to almost 2,500. And we rejigged the warehouse a little bit, the planograms, and all these 2,500 essential items that we were delivering, we co-located them. So the picker did not have to walk long distances for picking orders. And we did a lot of these other simple improvements, which is that the dark stores could not order in loose quantities from the mother warehouse. They only had to order in bulk. So if a Kindle bottle would come in packs of 20, this dark store could also order only in packs of 20. We opened up, for example, all the slots for 1 full week. In the past, today or tomorrow was enough, which meant that if you ordered some stuff today, you could get it on the same day, or at worst, it'll be delivered tomorrow. And we didn't have to ever open up slots on T+2. But here we opened up slots for T+7. And, we had to make some changes in the product and the way, the supply chain was operating. And we also worked with the suppliers very closely to ensure that whatever products we're selling, those were the products that were being supplied to us more reliably. So I think we did many things which is tied up with other associations to provide us temporary manpower. We improved efficiencies both in the picking side in the warehouses, warehouse processes, as well as deliveries, as well as we tried to get people back to work by speaking to them. And some of them who were in the city, who were still had not left for their hometowns, some of them were willing to come back. So I think gradually we recovered capacity. And, if you were doing 100 orders at one point of time before the crisis, after the crisis hit, we were doing less than 30 orders. And it took a while beyond which, after which we got back to 100 and, went beyond to 150. So for example, it took us 9 months to get from X crores to X plus 100. It took us 5 months to get from that number to another 100 crores. So it just took us less than a month to get to the last 100 crores. So I think the crisis has been very positive, provided a tailwind and provided the proof of concept that online shopping works to a lot of skeptics. And I think we are seeing traction in the tier 2, tier 3 cities as well. Those were cities where we struggled when it came to unit economics because people were very, very price sensitive. And, convenience was not such an important thing for them, unlike in tier 1 cities. But we are seeing that tier 2, tier 3 cities also suddenly there is a huge spike in demand. That's a good sign for us. So frankly, for us, we had a problem that was a good to have problem. There are several industries which have been very badly hit, and I think those have really struggled. Those industries have taken some of those difficult steps, difficult measures, and have had to go through some real issues. We have not, unfortunately, have had to go through any of those difficult issues.
One question that comes to my mind when you're talking about this sudden challenge you're faced with, right? Scaling up to 5x because demand is 5x and the manpower is only 20%. What kind of person thrives in this environment, and what skills does that person really require to adapt to such a challenging business environment?
So that's a very difficult question to answer. All I can say is that the pandemic has created a lot of uncertainty. That is very clear. So, for example, none of us, unlike in 2008 or 9/11, we all had a sense of what is expected. 2008 was a credit crisis. We had seen credit crisis in the past. We had seen pure economic recessions in the past, and we had some sense of how it would play out. But this is a medical crisis of sorts. So none of us really know how it is likely to play out. It has a huge impact on the economy. Several industries are shutting or facing serious issues. But then we have no idea how this would play out, how long it would take for a vaccine to get developed. How long will people take to become confident again to start congregating in places, in traveling? So how will airlines be impacted? We have no idea about all this. All I can say is that it has created a lot of uncertainty. And therefore, the people who will thrive will certainly be people who are comfortable in uncertainty, who are comfortable with chaos, who are comfortable in leading during uncertain times, who see this uncertainty as opportunity, who see a crisis as an opportunity. So I think those are the kind of people that would eventually thrive.
Okay, and one of the talks you gave, Hari, it's a TED talk, and again I would refer our students to this TED talk on the major challenge that India is faced with. That there's nearly 12 million graduates who are looking for jobs every year. Maybe if you could just share a very quick summary of what that is, and maybe you can go to the next question.
I'm not sure what you're really referring to, but the fact is that yes, 12 million people are roughly that number are entering employable age every year, and it's not very easy to provide such a large number of people with well-paying jobs. And if you just look at the India's GDP and India's savings rate of roughly 25%, if you use the entire savings of the economy to create jobs, you cannot create more than possibly zero point 0.8 to 1 million well-paying jobs. Even if you look at capital-intensive industries, investments that are touted by governments, consecutive governments, as we've tied up with Nokia for putting up a manufacturing plant here, all these are extremely capital-intensive and they don't really create jobs in large numbers. India is going to be a blue-collar economy to my mind. So, for example, if you just take Big Basket as an example, and I've taken this, so the amount of money that we have put in has created a certain number of jobs, and the number of amount of capital that we put in per job is pretty much similar to what India as a nation would have to put in if it had deployed its entire savings to create jobs. And if you look at Big Basket's job mix, we are about 75 to 80% blue collar and 20 to 25% white collar. So if India is to create jobs for these 12 billion people annually, then this is a mix that is available, which means that we will end up having 80% blue collar workforce and 20 to 25% white collar workforce. And I would say that there are some states in India which have been able to supply a lot of manpower where enough jobs don't exist. So for example, historically, due to various reasons, due to social oppression, due to lack of conducive conditions, due to complete breakdown of governance systems in some states, there has been no industry. If you look at Bihar, UP, parts of Madhya Pradesh, Jharkhand, they are completely, devoid of any kind of investments in industry. But they have a huge supply of labor, and this labor is actually fueling the growth of cities like Gurgaon, Bangalore, Pune, Mumbai, and all of these have grown on the back of migrant labor. The whole world economy has been built on the back of migrant labor, and India is no exception. And I think what the COVID crisis has suddenly created is that this migrant labor has been locked in these cities, and we all know the story, the tragic story of what's been happening on the migrant labor front, and that has become the face of the COVID crisis in India the last few months. Extremely tragic. And I think it'd be interesting to figure out how much time the migrant labor would take to begin to return to the cities of where they were working. So for example, 5 million migrant labor has returned to Uttar Pradesh, 2 million to Bihar and Jharkhand, another 1 million to West Bengal. So these people, some of my own sense is that 50% of them will return in about 6 months. 25% of them will take up jobs around their hometowns or villages because they don't think it's worth the risk going to faraway places like Bangalore and Mumbai. And 25% may continue to work on the farms that their relatives have, their parents have. So I think the point at a very high level, I think India is a nation which is a youthful nation, producing a large number of young people, and finding jobs for them is not going to be easy. And my own sense is that having aspirations that everyone would find a well-paying job is unrealistic.
The reason I'm asking that question is because we have almost one in every student from Jindal turns into at least from the business school, turns into an entrepreneur. That's something we're quite proud of at JGU. Hopefully many becoming job creators than job seekers. And a lot of students ask this question to us. Should I become an entrepreneur? Should I take this next couple of years to become an entrepreneur, or should I join an organization as an employee?
I would recommend a book. There's a book written by Swati Jena. It's a beautiful book titled An Entrepreneur Soul Book. Is this your cup of tea? It's just a short book, 120 odd pages. Anyone who has this question must read this book. This is a beautifully written book, very simple to read, 120 odd pages, asks all the relevant questions and helps this individual make a choice on whether to take up entrepreneurship or not.
All right. So, Mr. Krishnan, would you have any thoughts on this question on is this a good time to take entrepreneurship? Of course, I mean, Sir Hari's book is something we will read, but do you have any thoughts? And second question is, did you face similar challenges with people, not with a reduced workforce in Dabur?
Yeah, we did. I think I just continued from where Hari left it. I think some of the realizations that have happened is they have been, depending on, I mean, for whatever better word, this migrant labor for a lot of the, manually oriented jobs, whether it is stacking, cardboards in a warehouse or packing lines, non-technical lines, and very heavy dependence on that. But what people have also realized is that, look, if the labor itself is not going to be available, how do I manage life? And a TeamLease study had very clearly said TeamLease is one of the biggest third-party employers in the country. Their estimate is at least 35% of this manpower is not going to come back to the cities. So what is going to happen is there is going to be a demand and supply equation will get reset. Today, if you are able to in factories manage with by paying minimum wages, that may not happen. So typically then what organizations are going to say is, does it really make sense for me to pay so much to this, or am I better off increasing my automation? So the more automation that happens, whether in the factory side, to reduce dependence on labor, because you never know, tomorrow there is another pandemic, and again my dependence on labor is still there. So what have I learned from it, right? And I very clearly see a lot of organizations were kind of flirting and thinking about this entire area of digital transformation of their work process. That I see getting accelerated very, very rapidly. So that is going to get into white collar jobs also, at least the entry level and mid level and transactional jobs. So anything which can be automated, either through digital transformation or conventional automation, will get automated. Therefore, a lot of the conventional jobs may not exist in its current form going forward. So my recommendation to, just continuing the conversation that we had, I think students would be better off looking at what are the kind of jobs which are going to be available going forward. Very clearly, I see, areas around, natural language processing, computer vision, digital transformation, cognitive technologies. Organizations are going to move very, very rapidly in these directions to fund as a learning out of this pandemic to reduce dependence on physical movement and availability of people. Okay. Second, I think we'll have to also move out of the mindset of a permanent job. I very clearly see the gig economy accelerating at a very rapid pace. There will be organizations who probably want to look at people. A lot of jobs maybe for the short to medium term in a project based, and only keep people on roll on a permanent basis where they see there is a permanency required. So therefore, one needs to also look at my relationship with the organization in a very different way. I mean, and I think to not have a permanent job or not have a permanent distinct, if you're on a short-term assignment, I think it's pretty okay. There's nothing to feel bad about it. But one should not lose out on the opportunity to pick up relevant experiences. At the end of the day, what is going to happen is, what do you bring to the table? What knowledge do you possess? What skills do you possess? What capabilities do you possess? How can you add value to this organization? So I think a bit of paradigm of how we look at jobs and what kind of jobs will be available and what probably from the yesterday world is not going to be available. I think these are certain fundamental thinking which probably students and institutions will have to do.
One of the questions that students often ask and they are often faced with is they land jobs, but they think these are suboptimal jobs. They think they should be getting a much better opportunity, a much better role in a much better organization. So they are never, happy with what they get. I mean, that's how we are as humans. But in this environment, it's particularly difficult to get something you have always aspired for. So would you have any recommendations to our students on what they should be doing if they are faced with such a choice between, say,
Sriram, I think it's slightly losing you. But anyway, I got a gist of your question. Look, my only, I wouldn't say advice, I would say my recommendation would be that, look, it's not just about being in this platform. I mean, in our own family circle, there are kids who are passing out of graduating and looking for jobs. My, sorry if I'm sounding a bit old school, especially people who are logged in. Look, whatever area you might be, I think a lot of youngsters need to understand there is no substitute to good old uh, dirtying your hands in operational work. Because we get into this trap of wanting to do strategic work. I'm an MBA, there's a profile, all that is great. But every organization, there is nuts and bolts work, there is process and systems work, there is strategic work. So unless you have worked with your own hands and you understand the gut of that whole thing, as you rise in the organization, you will come across very hollow. So never lose an opportunity to spend your initial time in the organization doing genuinely operational and executional work, because that is where the cookie crumbles actually, right? Second, I would say this is not the time to be too hung up on compensations and what am I getting paid and things like that, because most organizations have a tremendous cost pressure. As such, recruitments are not going to be happening very easily in the short to medium term. We're assuming that things recover, at least by October, November in a very hyper optimistic way. So no new jobs are getting created. Existing jobs, I mean, there's a lot of thinking on whether we are in a position to give increments. If we can we defer it? So there's tremendous amount of cost pressure in the organization. So if you're getting a decent job in a decent organization in a role for which you're trained and learned, pick it up. Don't be too choosy. See what best you can do with it is my recommendation. And more importantly, question that, look, whatever I've learned, what value can I add when I join there? And try to expand your skills beyond what you have been taught. I mean, if it means that you have to spend some additional time and effort, getting onto a Lynda or a Coursera or something, and brush up these things on data analytics or something on machine language or things like that. Additional skills will always be useful, and pick relevant skills which will be in demand going forward. So these would be some of my broad thoughts on your question.
Hari, would you have anything to add there?
Yeah, so I think a couple of things. One is, of course, I think good habits is not something you pick up at the time of a crisis. Good habits you begin to cultivate even during good times. So the crisis is not the best of time to suddenly start going upskilling and learning new courses. I think the attitude towards learning, curiosity must always be there, and it will pay back in times of crisis like this. And it holds true for individuals, it holds true for companies. I think companies also begin to develop a lot of bad habits during good times when they're well funded. They hire thoughtlessly. At the end of the crisis, they begin to fire people. They make acquisitions because they're sitting on a pile of cash, hallucinating synergies where no synergies exist in reality. So I think a lot of bad habits get developed during good times. So a bad time is not a time to suddenly realize, I should start and doing learning. I should start to be frugal. So all these good habits should be developed in good times. Let me just give you the example of a real example to illustrate a case where, people are complaining about work not being, the kind that they would like. So at BigBasket, a very simple example. So at BigBasket, sometime in 2015, we took the decision to, go to tier 2 cities. And, we had a very small, travel budget in the past prior to that, because travel was not big. But after we decided to move to tier 2 cities, suddenly travel exploded. And the travel desk broke down. And after a period of time, we realized that, no travel company, whether it was Make My Trip, Yatra, Clear Trip, was willing to work with us because we had not paid their bills. Similarly, an employee would go to Vijayawada in the middle of the night to a hotel, and the hotel would say a room is not blocked for you. and the taxi would not turn up. We had not paid the taxi company's bills. And when we figured out, we realized that, everything was in a mess. Thousands of invoices were lying in the drawers of the travel executive. So we called one woman who had a day job to do, smart one, and came from a good education background. And we asked her, can you clean this up? Can you fix this? Her entire thought process was, what strategic value does it add to my CV? What will I learn in this process? And, if I do this, it's beyond my call of duty, will you guys consider a special bonus for me? Then we got another lady again, and we asked her, would you fix it? She said, how many days would you give me? We said 10 days. She said, do I have access to resources? We said, no. But if you want, you can go ahead and hire an intern. The company won't help you. You figure out how to hire an intern. In 10 days flat, she fixed it. And now just think a bit about it, right? The first person asked, what does it add to my CV? Is it strategic? But just think about it. What the lady finally did, the second one, was very strategic, because we had invoices and we had, did not have proof. For example, whether somebody had traveled and used the hotel room or not. And therefore, we had to take some management calls. So she worked with the key stakeholders in management, taking some of those decisions, handling old issues, and fixing processes in a way that such a thing would not repeat. Nothing can be more strategic than this. I think people have to realize that, strategy is always learned in the context of execution. While in a business school, you might, read Portler and figure out a few strategies, Porter. But, on the ground, you learn strategy only by working on the ground and by executing stuff. I think that's a very powerful lesson for everyone. And therefore, I would say that, and the reality also is that in this kind of a situation, you will have more graduates than you have jobs. That's going to be the reality. And I think, hundreds and thousands of people are losing jobs in various sectors. Indigo has laid off hundreds of pilots. Make My Trip is the only travel company that is likely to survive. And that too, after its market cap has come down to almost 30% of what it was. Other travel companies are likely to shut. So with this background, you can't expect fresh graduates to be walking out with huge salaries. I think the point that Krishna made is you have to be realistic, you have to be reasonable in your expectations, both in terms of the type of companies that come for recruitment as well as the salary packages they offer. I think my biggest learning has been that good habits are always cultivated in good times. When bad times hit you, that's not the time to start thinking, what, I need to upskill, what should I learn? You should always be curious, you should always take, whatever you're studying, and you're young students, right? Whatever you're studying, take it seriously. Try to be curious, ask a lot of questions. So I think those are all things that you develop well in advance, not at the time when a crisis like this hits.
Thanks, Hari. And Meenal, do you have any questions for now? We have 20 minutes to go, so maybe we can start opening this up for Q&A.
Yeah, so something that I have learned specifically from here is that I used to hear that, COVID-19 has also had certain positive impacts. I think these two are the cases of live examples of how it has created positivity for some at least. So my first question is, both of you have talked about how much difficult it was to get labor at these times. There was a crisis at that point of time and the demand had increased. So do you think that the employees were already working? There had been a lag in their productivity as well. So how did you try to bring about that productivity to a level that the demand is met for the customers?
As I was telling you, we were not able to meet the demand because, if 100 people were needed, only 20 turned up. And that's pretty expected. All of us were working in the safety of our homes. And it's not surprising that these frontline workforce also wanted to be safe. They were scared to come out and work. So only 20 would turn up. Despite taking all the precautions of the workplace, only 20 really turned up. So therefore, we could deliver only 30% of the orders. So despite making some improvements in productivity, we could deliver only 30% of the orders. So 20% people delivering 30% of the orders means 150% productivity. So that was the problem that we faced. So only after, things began, getting relaxed a little bit, the unblocking began to happen progressively. And when people realized that at the end of the day, safety and health is important, but a livelihood is also important. Many of them are not fortunate like you and me where they could sit at home and draw a salary. They need to be out there working. Otherwise, they're just making ends meet. So that's the reality about the poor in India. So eventually, I think when the unlocking happened, we began to get people back. That's the reality.
You want me to respond to that, Meenal? Yeah.
Definitely, sir.
Look, in our case, like what we did was, since many of our products were in the essential products basket in the beginning. So, and like Hari was saying that, people were genuinely afraid of coming to the plant, So we took a lot of effort while we had all our complete SOPs on social distancing, ensure sanitizing and deep cleaning is happening every day. Major this thing is happening on the weekend. Canteens. I'm first talking about the factory environment. Then in the regional offices also, so what we said was that, look, you can't expect the frontline sales guy or this thing to come if people who have a laptop and this thing and can operate from home continue to operate like that, So we said that, look, at least in the regions, the zonal manager needs to go. The area sales manager also needs to come. So that, you have to show, look, FMCG sales is like how the army works. If the colonel and the captain are not there in the front line, how do you expect the troops to turn up? Right? So we told people that, look, we will support you in all kinds of this thing. We ensured everybody had a sufficient mask, hand sanitizers, protective gearing. Offices were sanitized, but we said, look, if you want that sales officer or the distributor salesman to come and work, at least be on the field, be visible. Otherwise, how are you going to inspire people to come? The factories, the production manager, the HR people literally called up each and every workman, their families, spoke to their wives, told them that this is the kind of safety things that we have done. And we said that, and we told those people, they come for work, even if you have an iota of doubt that you're not feeling well, we will help you go back and you come back when you want. So at least you want to get the basic machinery going, The similar dialogue we had with our third-party vendors, third-party manufacturers, suppliers. So I would say, as people got confidence, the momentum started building up, right? But yes, if productivity had to be increased, I mean, we had to. If normally a line's OE is about 70-75%, we said this has to be taken up to 90%. We have no choice, right? So the multiplicity of things. I think more important was taking people into confidence and leading from the front and telling them, look, the organization is there to take care of you if something happens to you. In fact, we went to the extent of even taking Mediclaim covers for our warehouse boys and stockist distributor salesmen for about 6 months at our cost. We told the distributors and some of the warehouse people that you take the cover, we'll reimburse you for that. So the guy at least has the confidence that if something happens to me, because he won't have a medical cover, he won't have a Mediclaim, he won't know where to go. So at least we ensured that, there is some level of social security cover around him beyond protecting his salary and things like that. So it's a multi-pronged approach that one had taken to, ensure that people start coming to work.
Thank you. So, Mr. Krishnan, my next question to you is, for new joinees, especially the fresh graduates, they are actually being joined, the onboarding is done virtually and they are actually starting their journey through work from home. So what is your piece of advice for those new joiners who are not in contact of physically with the organization but joining work from home?
Look, first of all, I would suggest that today there is a lot of information on organizations available on public domain. If you're a listed company, then everything is available on public domain. Even if you're not listed, there is enough and more analyst reports, other thing. You can go to platforms like Glassdoor or other, So read up and educate yourself about the organization, its business, irrespective of the function you are in. I would say, all of us were taught a very basic thing in business. Revenue minus cost is profit, right? You must understand what are the revenue lines of this organization, what are their cost structures, what is their profitability. So you should understand the business at a very macro level, because in an online onboarding, there is only that much that one can do. Because while a lot of organizations are trying to what to do a physical induction, they're trying to do through their own office video platforms like Skype or MS Teams or whatever it is. So do a lot of preparation, read up. If the organization is not put together an induction program for yourself, at least talk to the HR and say that, look, I need to know more about it. At least cover basic functions like, manufacturing, supply chain, IT, sales, marketing. At least you should know how does this jigsaw fit together, and ask some basic questions to get your understanding. Because if you don't understand the business model, and the lines of revenue, cost, and profit, you will not be able to relate to anything else that's being spoken to you. The moment you're able to look at your work and your assignment from a larger impact of how does the business run and where this get connected, you will see much more meaning and value in your role.
Thank you. Mr. Hari, my question to you is, at these times or after these times, do you think a multidisciplinary approach is better or a specialized one?
Honestly, I haven't understood the question as to what does it mean, multidisciplinary approach or specialized means what?
So multidisciplinary is having knowledge of various aspects. For example, you do have a knowledge of law, you do have a knowledge of business, you do have a knowledge of international affairs, or do you believe a focus on your specific domain that you're about to work for?
Frankly, I think the pandemic has changed a few things. It has not changed hundreds of other things. And our responses and approaches to many things in life will have to be what it was before. There's no need to assume that everything in life is going to undergo a change because of this pandemic. So I don't know how specialization versus generalization, general stuff will get impacted by the pandemic. I think earlier also this debate existed, and that debate will continue. And I don't think this has made any changes to that.
So we also have, so I read in Economic Times that Gartner company has actually withdrew its offer letters to students. So I think that is a major setbacks for freshers who are about to enter and their offer letters being withdrawn. So what is your piece of advice for them?
So my view on this is that if I were in their position, I would honor any offers that have been made. And the reason why I would say this is because I would prefer to make my offers very thoughtfully and therefore honor those offers. I think companies which make large number of offers, visit campuses, go to IITs, pick up 100 tech grads, they are companies who are doing it, I would say, a little recklessly, which is they're building oversized teams, over-capacitizing beyond their genuine requirements, as a result of which they are taking some of these drastic steps. So I think those who hire thoughtlessly will fire thoughtlessly, will dishonor offers thoughtlessly. So I think my own recommendation, if you ask me what they should do, is honor whatever offers have been made.
There's one question, I think Meenakshi's posed this. Are retail companies planning to skill migrant laborers who have no exposure to required skills? And Hari, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, most retail companies don't need people with skills, frankly. I think all it takes is 1 week to train a person in the warehouse to operate as a, in the logistics side. It just doesn't take more than that. So I think real skills are needed in manufacturing, to work in factories, to work in construction, work in the automobile industry. Those are areas where real skills are required and where companies need to go out of their way and effort, and make a lot of effort to skill people and retain skilled people. Retail industry can pick up anybody in wayside, put them through 1 week of training, and they are skilled to do their job. Their job is not at all skilled. So I would say that, this question is not really relevant for us. We can go out, hire 100 people, put them to some training for a week, and they are skilled to do whatever job is there in retail. Retail is not a very, very skilled job, especially in the blue collar category.
Shriram, I mean, just to add to that, what Hari had said, in most organized manufacturing setup, there are multiple, layers and curriculums of training already designed. So you have a kind of training program for the typical unskilled labor, which so there is some level of training on safety, basics of quality, health, hygiene, you know, around how to read the visual symbols on the shop floor and things like that. Then, of course, for the ITI kind of people, there'll be another kind of training, and there is for the diploma people. So there is a very tired training system available. So that will continue. I think going forward, many of the unskilled jobs, as I very clearly see organizations going very aggressively towards automation and like it's like you have been stung by the non-availability of manpower. So if at the end of the line you are using them for picking up the carton and doing wrapping and putting it on a trolley, it's a very so maybe you might say automated cartonators, so that no, I don't need a manpower out there. So many of these things are going to happen. So some of those very low-end jobs are going to vanish, and very clearly a lot of work on technology-based automations will happen. So the skilling requirement going forward may be of a very different nature. So my current curriculums of training may have to be revisited for certain levels of people. That's what I would say. But training was earlier there; it will continue to be there.
Just add to your point, Milan, this question sometimes I keep encountering in forums, which is that, what is the future of leadership after the COVID crisis? Sometimes I find the question a little odd. I'll just read to you, what BCG, there was a document by BCG, Boston Consulting Group, had put out on this. It is laughable. So the title is 7 Priorities for the New Now. First of all, new now is a jargon that is being created. Leadership in the new reality requires head, heart, and hands. I don't know what this means. And they've listed 7 priorities. Smart work is the first one. Drive smart work to create competitive advantage. What's the meaning of that? Smart work was always important. It was important to work smartly to create competitive advantage. Physical and mental health was always important. And then leadership with head, heart, and hands. I don't know what this means. Purpose-driven culture. And the last is create a bionic organization, accelerate the revolution of your operating model and create a bionic company. My own sense is that the pandemic has not changed a lot of things. And some of these discussions tend to be a little artificial. I'm sure pandemic has impacted a lot of industries. I gave you examples of retail, any industry that requires people to come in close physical contact has got very severely impacted, and we have no idea how long it will take to recover. Factories suddenly have to operate with the concept of social distancing. Therefore, the productivity will be low. They can't employ so many people. Will they automate going forward? God knows. They may automate, they may not automate, because labor might return very quickly. And automation is not a switch that you turn on and say, you know what, labor not available, I'll automate. Automation takes forever. At Big Basket, we have never been able to automate most things, that Amazon may have automated in the US. We've never tried to do that. So automation doesn't happen with the flip of a switch just because a few people don't turn up because of a pandemic. The hope is that they will turn up after a while. So some of these tend to be a little far-fetched, I would say. The reality is that the pandemic has changed a few things, but fundamentals about many things, including leadership, have not undergone a change.
Thank you. So another question that we have from one of the attendees, that what do you think are the hard and soft skills required in your type of industry?
Which industry? Is it retail?
Retail, yeah.
I don't know about hard and soft skills. For example, I would say different roles in a business, whether it's retail or anything, let me take retail, need different type of skills. So for example, if there is a business head running, let's say Chennai as a business area, region business head for Chennai, needs a combination of domain knowledge of retail, which means buying and merchandising, inventory management, and requires, skills about managing a large workforce, managing, a P&L, running a business profitably, should have that, and should have the skill of dealing with government agencies. So each role requires a different set of skills, and those skills were there before the COVID crisis hit. Those will continue. An inventory controller needed a different set of skills compared to, for example, a region business head. A region HR head or training head would require a different set of skills. So it all depends on the job, I would say. Skills are all very dependent on the job, and not, blanket cannot be applied saying that an industry requires a certain set of skills. If you ask me slightly differently, which is that, will online require a different set of skills in online industry? I think yes, an online industry calls for a certain set of skills which an offline retail industry may not require. So online, Big Basket is an online, retail company, and therefore there are certain functions that we have: digital marketing, analytics, for example. These are functions, being able to look at traffic, being able to analyze conversions, being able to figure out what is the cost of acquiring customers, what is the cost of acquiring an existing customer, what is the cost of acquiring a new customer, what tweaks do we need to make in the product, how can we make the UX interface much better. These are all skills that are required for online industry. As compared to offline retail, they won't be required, none of these. Merchandising will have to be done in a very different way online, because you don't have a physical store, you just have an app or a website. So the way you merchandise your products and make them discoverable would be very different. So those are all skills that an online company, whether it's a Big Basket or a Flipkart, would certainly do.
Mr. Krishnan, my question to you is,
Maybe I'll just add to that. Yeah.
yes, sure.
Tell me.
Please continue, sir. Please continue.
No. I just wanted to add to what Hari was saying. Look, we have just to give you an example, we have a retail business of beauty and color cosmetics and personal care products called New You. It's a store called New You. About 110 stores we have. So obviously, it's physical distancing, and most of the stores being in malls and things like that. Now, globally, the trend that is emerging, it's coming to India also, that like for example, if a lady is going to buy color cosmetics, if you go to a physical store, you have the advantage of a beauty advisor standing there. She'll help you try it on your hand or something, how the lipstick is looking or whatever it is, or she'll do a free makeover for you and things like that. Those things are not going to be possible now. But now a lot of digital technologies are coming using face recognition, taking your own snap. L'Oreal has developed an app already where you can have a palette, you can color it and see how your face looks. You can do it at the comfort of your home. I believe Carrot Lane is is already working on how a particular jewelry is going to look at if you wear it. So the whole area of virtual reality, augmented reality, how to bring the whole space into a technology-enabled this thing to replace the physical experience. Then there is a growing trend of merging the physical world in the digital world. So people would probably scout for the product online, but have a curbside delivery, what you call scan online, pick offline kind of scenario. So all these will require multiple kinds of skills and mindset, because it will be slowly there will be a merging of the digital world in the physical world, and with the help of a lot of digital technologies getting used in it. So these are some of the areas where a lot of work in startups and the tech space has already started in a big way. So because in India and in many places, the world is never purely digital or it's purely physical. All of us, when you have to buy something, you will either check the price on e-commerce and then go to a store. Or you're standing in a store, you will check what is happening. So all of us are now looking at very a fused ecosystem around us. So therefore, accordingly, a lot of I would say skill requirements will also emerge around these spaces.
Somewhat related to this, when we look at the hiring and firing in these times or the coming times, do you believe there will be certain discriminatory practices in there? For example, last hired, first fired, or certain age groups being targeted for laying off first?
Look, most evolved organizations, I don't think would follow any discriminatory practices. I mean, just to respond to what continue what Hari had said earlier. As such, if you got your ear to the ground, the consumer sentiments in the country for financial year 1920 was not very great. We had a very bad Diwali. The festive season was not very great. So as such, there was a consumer slowdown. So most organizations had kind of started getting a bit more realistic on the talent needs, the hiring needs, even when the annual operating plan and budgeting was done in Jan Feb for the next financial year. So there was a lot of focus on cost and frugality. Now whoever has come, I think people essentially what would happen is, I mean, most evolved organizations, what the approach has been that, look, given a choice, I should not try to fire people. If I can manage by reducing salaries, maybe beginning at the top, where the affordability is high, comfort levels are high, take the knock more at that end. Try to protect salaries at the lower end at this important. And the lowermost end, to the extent possible, let them not get affected. Or if possible, even try to give them some kind of a nominal increase. So that has been the kind of approach of most, at least evolved and level-headed organizations. So I don't think anybody is going to get into discriminatory practices. I mean, for example, if the business is really so bad that I may have to wind up that business, or it's not viable for me to run it any longer, or take the losses beyond what I've already absorbed, then it's a totally different story where you may have to, it's an unfortunate situation, but sometimes, they say that you have to amputate the portion of the leg to save the body. So I hope such disasters are not there, and if in a well-managed organization, such things should not be there. But one can't rule that out. But I don't think there again it will be followed. I don't think there's any discriminatory practice around it.
So, Mr. Hari, one question has come from one of the attendees, Mr. Manas. He asked, what should leaders do then to convert challenges into opportunities?
So I think everyone has said this, that every crisis has in it the seeds of an opportunity, seeds of innovation, and also seeds for destruction. It is how you choose to look at it, irrespective of the final outcome. So, all of us have heard of, in 1453, the battle for Constantinople. The Ottoman Turks took Constantinople after beating the Byzantine Empire. And they progressively spread into Europe and Asia and cut off all the trade routes to India from Europe. And then that resulted in people finding alternate sea routes to India. It resulted in, Columbus discovering the New World. It resulted in Magellan going around the earth. It resulted in Vasco da Gama, coming around Africa and into India. It's not as simple as it sounds, because, you depended on winds for sailing those days. You didn't have motors. So whichever direction the wind took you, you had to go. Yet he found a way to India. The wind swept him away to almost to Central and South America. But then when winds changed, he came to India. So if you look at history, all through history, a crisis has an amazing way of bringing different, groups of people together. These groups of people under normal times don't necessarily work very fiercely together. There is some degree of competitive spirit that comes in, which prevents collaboration to the fullest. But a crisis, I think, breaks many of those barriers, and people begin to collaborate in unheard of ways, creating innovation. World War II, just read about it and you will find that World War II resulted in huge innovation. Radar was discovered at that point of time. Several drugs were discovered at that point of time. MRI was discovered at that point of time. So many inventions. In fact, the Allies would often say that we had better German engineers than the Axis powers. That was very ironical and interesting. And so if you look at any single crisis, I think there has been innovation. At Big Basket, we've been able to solve problems that would have taken months. We've solved those problems in weeks, because teams were forced to get together, break barriers, and solve problems in very innovative ways. So I think a crisis has a way of getting people together. And when you get together, I think innovation is bound to happen. So I think a crisis is a very, very powerful, and I would even go to the extent of saying it's necessary for innovation.
In fact, I would go to the extent of saying that crisis is probably the right time to do innovation. Because in a crisis, most of the customers and their stakeholders are relatively more patient. They are also more forgiving of your errors. So any kind of bold initiative that you need to do with a larger interest in mind, these are in fact, the amount of new products which FMCG companies have launched between March, April, May, and June I think they wouldn't have done in the last 4 years. Whether it is, if I take Dabur's case alone, I mean, a normal NPD which would probably taken about 18 to 24 months has happened in a matter of 3 to 4 weeks. Whether it is the Ayush formulation of, a mixture of Ayurvedic herbs or what they call, that concoction, or the tulsi drops which we made, or the other things like vegetable washing liquid. So many of these things, because the consumer demands it, and you don't have the luxury of sitting on it from the R&D stage to the concept stage to technically proving stage, and marketing taking its own time for campaign. So everything has to work simultaneously. So people take that additional risk because you know that you work in a crisis. And if it's not 100% perfect, I mean, as long as the product delivers, people will be more accepting and more this thing. So crisis is the time when you should intelligently innovate and intelligently collaborate. Like, for example, when we didn't have trucks to reach the last mile delivery, there was a truck aggregator who was having Tata Aces and Tempos unutilized. So we collaborated with him because the stockist was not able to run his units because he was not having drivers. His people were not coming. Or we tied up with Swiggy for delivery. So I think a lot of innovative, co-creative work happens if you have the right approach towards it.
The last question from my side is, I think, a little philosophical, but something that all the students would love to hear is your piece of advice to the batch of 2020.
Tough times don't last, tough people do, is a very standard advice. And I would say cultivate all good habits in good times. Be curious, ask a lot of questions. Don't chase salaries, don't chase strategic work. Go to the ground, learn some stuff, spend time meeting interesting people, talking to interesting people, take some risks, do new things, chase the important things in life. Over a period of time, develop purpose and meaning in your life.
Thank you, Mr. Hari. Mr. Krishnan?
Yeah, my only thing is that, look, if you go back to history, many of you may not have been around. Look, in the year 2000, there was this dot-com burst. Okay. So there was this again, I think somewhere happened around December of 2000, if I vaguely remember. I think 2001. There was a lot of issues that what will happen to engineering graduates coming out, MBA graduates coming out. Then there was this 2008 US financial markets meltdown. If you see, the world has seen enough and more. And of course, there will always be a blip. I think it's unfortunate that the batch comes out at that point. It's coming out at that time. But I don't think, you will have to probably rough it out a bit more than your previous batches. But you need to be geared up for that. And, to use one of my first bosses, he said in Hindi, he said, जो पत्थर दीवार बनाने के काम आ गए वो ज्यादा देर सड़क पे नहीं पड़ी रहती. So are you that stone which can go into building a wall? Then somebody will pick you up. So that is what you need to ask yourself. Instead of being caught up with, is this strategic work? How much money am I getting? I'm an MBA. Should I do this work? I think you need to see how can I add value to myself, to the organization I'm working with, and make a positive impact. I think if you go with a fundamental good old mindset, I think one can get over to the other side without too much damage.
That is all from my side. Thank you so much. And I think all of us students need to keep in mind that these can be the times of advancement and opportunities if we have the correct mindset.
Thank you so much, Hari and Krishnan, for joining us today and spending time with our students on a Sunday, Sunday afternoon. We would love to have you, Hari, and sometime on campus. Mr. Krishnan is no stranger to our campus, and I'm sure he's based in Noida, so I'm sure he'll visit us again. But we would love to have you coming in from Bangalore someday. Had you been on campus, we would have given you a shawl and a mug and a jute bag, an eco-friendly jute bag. But unfortunately, we are not able to do that. Maybe I can request my team to courier it to you. Maybe that's possible now.
No, I think you did not bother about. I think there are too many important things you guys have to handle. And I'm not in Noida, Sriram. I'm in Ashok Vihar. It's closer to campus, actually.
Oh, sorry, yeah, Ashok Vihar, yes. So thanks again for joining us today, and we'll stay in touch.
Sure.
And maybe we'll have you on campus someday and have a more in-depth session on careers.
Thanks, Meena. Thanks, Krishnan.
Yeah, thanks,
Have a nice
Hari, and all the best to the batch of 2020.
Best
And
of
I'm
success.
sure all of you will do well.
Thank you so much. Thank you.